Hello everybody, I'm Karen Jane Casey and this is Moments with Carin. You might be wondering, what is this podcast about and who is it for? Well, it's on this podcast that I share past and present moments of my own or information from other sources, and all for the purpose of educating us, giving us lessons to learn, helpful information, encourage us in some way, or entertain us, or all of those. Each episode is put together with the idea that each and every one of us want to gain insights along our journey that will increase our joy in some way. The message in these episodes is for each and every one of us, regardless of how good we feel our life is right now or how deep and dark our troubles may be. We might be a devout believer in the Lord, or we might be someone who questions everything. Please be assured that during this 15-minute episode, I'm not going to be lecturing down at you or preaching and yelling at you. I'm sharing what I've learned and what I'm learning along my journey. We learn together, and what you have learned, I encourage you to share. Your testimony is important, and someone needs to hear it. Well, today's episode is Memories of My Canine Friends. So as I was flipping through the Facebook pages, I saw some dogs that reminded me of my own, and then I was flooded with fond memories of them. And I thought, well, if I share mine, maybe it will remind you of fond memories you have with yours, and it'll entertain you, hopefully. So my first dog of my life was Frisky. He was a beagle, and his name was just right. He was very frisky. He was also a great escape artist, and I can remember many times that the whole family had to search for him in our community or while we were on a vacation trip. Well, eventually he did break free and continue with his adventures. Then Duke. I want to show you a picture. I found this. It looks so much like him, though. So Duke was a stray black and white collie who adopted our family while I was a teenager. And early into our relationship, he followed at a distance my sisters and I as we were walking to the post office along the sidewalk in a rural area in West Virginia. But suddenly, a vicious Doberman pinscher leaped from the embankment after us. He was headed right for us, and Duke met him in the air and saved us. And so, he won the battle. They fought right in front of us. From then on, we considered him our dog, and he adopted us. We never walked without him being there to protect us. One bad habit that Duke had, though, was that he loved to chase after Volkswagens and try to bite their bumper. So Rusty, here's a picture of him. Isn't he adorable? So Rusty was an adorable, mischievous, little rust-colored Pomeranian who my husband found, husband at the time, he is deceased now, but he found him while we were living in Pulaski, Virginia. And we think that maybe he jumped from a car window because he had a little broken leg, and he was in terrible condition. He must have been on his own for a while. The vet cleaned him up and repaired his leg. We advertised, but no one ever claimed him, thank the Lord. Rusty loved to growl at big dogs while I held him in my arms, scaring me to death because I thought they were going to leap after me and get the poor little thing. But I soon realized that, big dogs are usually very gracious to silly little dogs who challenge them. So Rusty, another thing he loved to do, he loved to grab the end of the toilet paper in the upstairs bathroom, and then he would run as fast as he could down the stairs with a trail of toilet paper going with him. He loved to do that, especially when we had company. So he was a part of our family for at least 8 years while my children were growing up. So Reno. Here's a picture of Reno. Reno was my great big lap dog, a black and white Siberian Husky with blue eyes. And that is until we moved, and then he couldn't handle the move. He couldn't adjust to it. So I had to make my home a good fit for him. And I tried everything. I even had a sitter to watch him during the day because he couldn't be alone in the house anymore. So after consulting a vet, I built an enclosed kennel, and I had to buy a female Siberian Husky to be his companion. And that worked, thank God. Sheena was a solid white Siberian Husky with brown eyes. There's a picture of her. And they made a great team. They loved to run up and down my stairs in my house, and they'd run together, and it sounded like horses. The house kind of shattered a little bit. It shook a little bit. One time they got into a fight in the back seat of the car while I was driving. And finally I had to pull over onto the shoulder, and I fussed at them. And then Sheena fussed back at me. And I pointed my finger at her and I said, "Don't you talk back to me." And so the rest of the ride home, they looked out their own window and didn't speak at all. That was so cute. So early one Sunday morning, they escaped from their kennel. And, you know, they could be pretty scary to people. Two great big full-size huskies running around. They don't know if they're mean or not. So I knew that this was an emergency situation. So I ran out of the house and I chased after them all over the neighborhood until I finally realized I only need to catch Sheena and take her home, and then Reno would follow. And that's exactly what I did. So then once home, I realized that I was wearing the most ridiculous pajamas I could have been wearing. And of course, the next day, my neighbor commented to me, "Well, we enjoyed watching you walk your dog Sunday morning." I had a terrible time getting Sheena bathed. Finally, I had a good plan. I attached her to the outside of the pen with her leash, and then I had the neighbor girl to run the hose while I washed her. That was at least the plan. But when I got her, within seconds, Sheena had me and her tightly bound on the ground, you know, like cattle tied up. We were tied up together real tight, and my neighbor was still watering us. Although I loved them very much, I had to face it that they were just too much for me to handle, and I knew they would be happier when they could run free on several acres. So I did give them up for that. So Sable. Can you see that? Sable was a white, powder-puffed Chinese crested. She was my sweet companion for many years. She was prissy and expressive. When angry with me, she would literally stick her nose up in the air. Oh, I have a picture of that. See? And one time, after I had been on a trip and she was at a kennel and she didn't enjoy it, she didn't speak to me and had her nose stuck up in the air for 3 days. One time, I had to crawl under the house to investigate the underside for moisture. And I really dreaded that because I was thinking of spiders and snakes. So when I finally mustered up the nerve to do it, she crawled under there with me. When my husband and I got together, he had Nikki with him. Nikki. This is Nikki. He was an incredibly smart Yorkie. Oh my gosh, he did things that I've never seen a dog do before. Like, for instance, one time when we had a friend over with 2 of their Shih Tzus, Nikki did not want to be around them. So I looked, and he was actually tippy-toeing through the kitchen so they wouldn't see him. And he also played a game of charades. When we didn't understand what he was wanting, then he would go through the motions to demonstrate it to us. And then he would kind of look at us like, "Are you stupid?" He was really something. At first, he and Sable had terrible arguments, and she would snap at him really bad when it was time to eat, if they were anywhere together. But after some time, he was very kind to her, and he would even be the one to let us know when they had to go outside or when they had to eat. She got so she didn't even tell us. She would rely on Nikki. And they loved to go to work together with my husband. And that's how he stole Sable from me. She was his dog as soon as she started going to work with him. But I think he added many years to her life as well. Nikki was in an accident at work one day, and everyone was so sad at his passing. He was about 8 years old. Even truck drivers cried over him. During the last few weeks after his passing, we had a few mishaps of forgetting to take Sable outside or to feed her even, because she still didn't tell us anything. She seemed to have forgotten to know how to tell us, so we had to put her on a schedule. Sable and my husband became very close, and she continued to go to work with him every day. And she lived to be about 17 and a half years old when she passed, and that was very hard for my husband to bear. But you know, we have many great memories of her and of all our precious canine friends and companions. They're a family. So did any of these stories cause you to remember your own experiences? Well, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was entertaining. And please let me know how it might have affected you. I love all feedback. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode on Moments with Carin. This is Carin Jane Casey, author, speaker, domestic violence advocate, and ambassador for Christ. I have a faith-based podcast available on stormtalk365radio.com, and that is Turn to God with Carin every Monday morning at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. The platform is Spreaker.com, and you can Google the name by podcast and choose from the listing to see the episodes. We're available on iTunes, Twitter, and Alexa on Amazon, hosted by iHeartRadio and Spotify. Well, I have a special announcement. Because I want to ensure that you all receive the very best quality of podcasts that I can deliver, then I'm going to concentrate only on the podcast Turn to God with Carin. And that means that the other podcasts, such as Abundant Living with Carin or Moments with Carin, will have their last episodes to air on February 18th and 19th. But, you know, there will be archives, so you can turn to the ones that I've already done. As always, any comments are welcome, and I would love to have your reaction to this change. You can go to CarinJaneCasey.com, and that's where you can give me your feedback, your suggestions, and also you will find there the books that I've written. My Dear Rosa Jean, my first novel, very dramatic, very suspenseful, also about overcoming. Mystery at Candace Bay, that's a real page turner, and it also is encouraging. Granny Babysits the Mischievous Five is a fun children's chapter book. All of my books are available on Amazon.com, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble Nook. Also, if you want to watch my video on YouTube, then you would go to Carin J. Casey on YouTube. That's CarinJayneCasey on YouTube. And if you go there, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Well, thank you and God bless.